A lot of people also feel that under Nelson Harvey's reign left a bad taste in people's mouths. Are you going to clean up, or rather, for the lack of a better phrase, raise the bar at the LSK?
Indeed, Jeff. That is our primary and singular objective. In this country, there is no desire to fight corruption. You can take that to the bank.
Did you listen to the Hot Breakfast this morning? Here's what you missed.
Nelson Harvey left now to run for the Westland seat, as you well know. And they had elections the other day. And on Thursday, elected Eric Theuri as the incoming president of the LSK. Eric is live with us in the studio today. He's going to tell us about all the wrangles within LSK and how they are going to go about restoring some kind of credibility, if you will, to the LSK. Eric, welcome to Hot 96.
Thank you so much, Jeff and Nick.
Good to see you, man, and congratulations on the elections.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
How did it go? How did the elections go?
Well, they went well. I mean, obviously I won, so...
So that was well.
That is well.
One was number two, you saying? If you hadn't won.
Yeah, but we had a good election, probably slightly lower turnout than in previous elections, but those were due to some structural issues and the fact that in most courts around the country we are now going virtual as opposed to going to courts physically, so that may have affected the turnout, but it didn't affect the results. I mean, at the end of the day, the lawyers spoke in very clear terms as to who they want to steer their society forward.
Yeah. So what does that mean for you from here going forward? What's the way forward for you as a president?
Ideally, what we want to do is to, sort of just take back the society to the basics, to the things that it ought to do, and to doing them in the manner that it ought to do them, less confrontational, much more of sobriety and professionalism in the manner in which we engage as we conduct our mandate, and of course ensuring that we are able to discharge our public watchdog mandate and just doing it right for the lawyers.
Yeah, there was a lot of controversy that dogged the period of the previous president, Nelson Harvey. I mean, there's a lot of infighting within LSK. At one point, council members being expelled, and basically there's a lot of chaos at the LSK. How do you restore sanity now, Eric?
Jeff, the period, of course, we had wasn't really good for the society. The much we can do is to pick our lessons from that period and move forward with those lessons in check, as opposed to keep on looking backwards. So the most important thing for me as a president is to ensure that you're able to lead a council that is united, that has a unity of purpose. And I think that every lawyer has been yearning for that demonstration of unity. And when there is unity in the leadership, then there is unity among the membership. Of course, we do know that there are one or two issues which may create some level of controversy, but we hope that we'll be able to navigate all those smoothly.
Let me ask you now, like speaking on behalf of ordinary Mwananchi, we have some rogue lawyers and situations where lawyers don't act in the best interest of the client, and then things just happen where no one ends up winning. How is this going to be addressed, or what kind of systems are in place at the moment?
The Law Society has quite a robust disciplinary process. What we need to probably do is to improve the pace at which we determine our cases. That has slowed down because we didn't have the members of the disciplinary tribunal, but those have also been elected together with the council. We also had elections for the disciplinary committee, so that we are hoping that once the members of the committee, the disciplinary committee, are in place, then the pace of resolving those disputes can pick up. But most importantly, what we want to focus on is a curative approach, as opposed to one where we are, rather an approach that prevents as opposed to curing. So that we want to increase our interaction with lawyers on the ethical aspect of it, to ensure that less are falling through the cracks.
Someone is getting a compensation, it comes through the lawyer, but then get to the client, and then the client has to follow up for so long. What can someone in that kind of situation do? Like right now, like today, what actions can someone take?
They can come to the Law Society and lodge an official complaint against the advocate. The Law Society will get in touch with the lawyer, get to find out what could have happened. In certain instances, you find that maybe the money hasn't really been paid. In other instances, the money has been paid, but for one reason or the other, the advocate has not disbursed those funds. In those situations, then we are able to get in touch with the advocate and urge them to pay the claimant, and when they don't, then disciplinary action is taken. And usually at the end of it all, the action that is taken results in repayment of
Money's owed.
the money is owed, and if you don't pay, then you are suspended, and your suspension will not be lifted until the money has been paid.
A lot of people also feel that under Nelson Harvey's reign left a bad taste in people's mouths. Are you going to clean up, or rather, for the lack of a better phrase, raise the bar at the LSK?
Indeed, Jeff. That is our primary and singular objective. Really, we believe that the Law Society, focusing on its mandate and discharging it faithfully and dispassionately, will automatically raise the profile of the lawyers. But we intend to do more than that. We intend to ensure that we are much more relevant in the country's discourse, and as you well know, we are going into an election year. And in an election year, then you require an LSK that is extremely strong and aggressive in ensuring that there is electoral justice.
It's going to be my next point, actually. We are in an election year, and it's going to be extremely challenging. You come in at a time, Eric, there's going to be a lot of challenges right now. I mean, people are challenging it from this point on. We're less than 6 months away.
Yeah, indeed. We know from April, it's going to be quite hectic and busy all the way to August. But we are prepared. We have already started thinking about the things that we need to do, the partners that we need to engage with, so that we are able to deal effectively with both pre and post nomination issues, and as well as even election observation and dealing with the dispute that may arise thereafter. So we are prepared. We're going to set up the necessary infrastructure to engage effectively with all those issues.
Yeah, because you can tell the nominations are going to be messy.
Very
messy. A lot of people will be running to court.
Do we have situations where we can make it known that once you've done wrong, you can't continue with this process? Because it doesn't make sense to be impeached, for example, then the next time you still run. Am I making sense when I put it that way, on behalf of the Mwananchi?
Indeed you are, and quite honestly, I expect challenges with regards to that process, because we have quite a number of governors who've been impeached, and we expect that there are going to be challenges on that, and we're preparing for them. It's an ongoing process, it's an ongoing discussion. We would not want to say so much now in terms of the position that we are going to take, but certainly those are among the issues that are going to come up. Integrity questions, in my view, are going to be extremely critical.
Chapter 6 has been, like you said, in the graveyard. Nobody ever bothers to touch Chapter 6 when it comes to an election. Why will it be different now?
There are a number of court decisions that have come up, which, in my view, have redefined the landscape. And so we expect that those aspects would be tested again when it now comes to IEBC clearing the candidates, because I think, to the best of my knowledge, IEBC has said that anyone who's been impeached will not be cleared. And so we naturally we expect that that process then is going to be challenged in court. And we are hopeful that there is the new jurisprudence would then either be cemented or be varied by the courts. But we hope that the courts will agree that the aspects of integrity are critical and should not be left to the choice of the voters at the polls, because the voters have shown us that sometimes they are their own worst enemies. So they need to be, some sort of assisted, quote unquote, assisted democracy, so that we present to the voters candidates with a little bit of credibility.
Speaking of credibility, are you, Eric, under your presidency, you're going to restore some kind of credibility back to the LSK? Because there's people who say, oh man, the good old days when the LSK was the LSK, and it's no longer that anymore.
And you weren't there during the good old days. Maybe Jeff was.
I think the law society, even in the good old days, has had its ups and downs. But perhaps the recent past, we've had a down that has never been experienced before. So there is a place at which we are drawing a line and saying that never again should the affairs of the law society descend to such levels.
Okay.
But truth be told is that we also aspire to have that society that was held in awe, the society that would cough and the entire country would get a cold. That is the kind of society that we would want to give to our membership, and not just to the membership, but also to the country, because of how important the role of the law society is. And then, Jeff, the question of rule of law is so critical, because it's the only thing that guarantees your safety and my safety. And that is how important the mandate of the law society is.
Where do you feel we, in Jeff's word, dropped the ball? Because from where it was to now, something must have happened in between.
Along the way, yeah.
Yes.
There's been a change in the landscape. If you remember, before the introduction of multi-party democracy, it was only the law society that was speaking as to matters of democracy and constitutionalism.
Okay.
But with the expanded free space, then we have a lot more of the civil actors coming into play. For example, you have Okiya Omtata, who, as a single individual, has been the single largest contributor of civil action. So the law society has opened up that space, and by opening up that space, it tends to appear as if the significance of the society has reduced. But what should have happened is that with the opening up of that space, then the law society should have taken a different approach to it, so that we are not just reactionary, which is what happens in most institutions or by people going to court. So we need the law society participating much more meaningfully in the processes itself, in Parliament being extremely robust in Parliament as the legislation are coming out, to be proposing itself legislation that the country needs to adopt, to be challenging, opening up, for example, you look at the public debt and how that is managed, and the process of negotiations of bilateral trade agreements. That is the space that the law society ought to be occupying, as it also engages in what we call strategic public interest litigation that is intended to guide government policy or actually change and influence government policy. So that is the space that we ought to be occupying, because this other space in terms of democratization and good governance has also extremely good actors. So the law society ought to engage in that, but also engage in this other different space in which it has complete expertise and members with diverse knowledge to be able to intervene at that level.
If someone has stolen, let's say, 1 million shillings, and there's all this evidence that has been collected by the bodies in charge of that, the police, the DCI, the forensics and everything, and they go to court, if they are found guilty, you are charged, you're fined, let's say, a portion of that, let's say 1%, let's say 100,000, and you're free to go. Is there a way LSK can lobby to change that, so that stealing public funds or committing crime becomes it's something that you don't easily get into? Because you see, it doesn't make sense to steal 1 billion then pay a fine of 3 million.
Yeah, Nick, I feel you. Let's be honest that in this country there is no desire to fight corruption. You can take that to the bank. The fight against corruption is a weaponized fight. It is targeted at only those who oppose the government. But those that are in good books with the government will get away scot-free. And that is the reason why you see that this fight against corruption has stalled, because there is no goodwill to fight corruption in this country. So let's take that to the bank. The first stage we have to go back to retrace our steps and really get leaders who are committed to the fight against corruption. Because whenever you look at all these cases that have been presented, especially the high-profile cases that have been presented in court, they lack evidence. And it is deliberate, because they are intended to send a particular message.
Can LSK fight for, having better ways of evidence collection? Because I also know in law, if you like audio, like let's say if I confess to something that I did, you can't present it in court. So there's like some issue with evidence collection, how it's presented. You know what I mean?
The processes are well laid out. The law is quite clear. What would happen is that if somebody intends to compromise that investigation, then they will collect that evidence without following the proper channels, the properly documented procedures that the law requires. That way, when then you come to court, it will be challenged. But where the evidence has been properly and legally collected, then there will be no challenge. So here is a lack of a will. There is a lack of will to investigate and prosecute people who are in economic crime. So we have to agree as a country that crime should not pay. Actually, economic crime should not pay, because it pays, and it pays big.
No, what's going to stop them? What's it going to take, in other words?
Yeah.
Because you can't go to jail for 4 months and then you're out and you still have the 400 million.
Yeah, in the bank.
You know, of course, there is a lot of anger when you look at the situation, and it almost feels hopeless, because if the agencies that are supposed to investigate and have been given the power and the authority to investigate, then engage in such selective investigation and prosecution. Let's look at, for example, the KEMSA issues. We all know, it's in the public realm that there were issues there. But who has the investigative capacity to unearth exactly what happened? No one can. Parliament has the powers to summon witnesses, the same power that the High Court has to summon witnesses. But those witnesses would come and just give them hogwash stories, the way they were walking and they were hit with a tender.
I've been driving outside KEMSA every day, twice a day for the last 6 months. I haven't gotten that lucky. In fact, now masks are worthless.
Yeah, so, I mean, look at this country. We have such high drama on extremely serious things.
Is there a way we can have, if someone promises to give kids laptops, for example, or stadiums? I'm not saying anyone in particular.
You don't have to.
Or 6,000 bob to everyone. Yeah. Do we have a way if, and they all say within 100 days I'll do ABCD, but 100 days gets into 200, kidogo it's 10 years, and nothing has been done. Do we have systems, maybe like we can copy from other countries and LSK fights on our behalf, where if you are unable to deliver on this, we hold you accountable? What can LSK do besides hiring Okia Umtata
and his chains?
Yes.
Well, we're pretty much very little that we can do other than activism around those areas, and trying to hold the government to account in terms of how it uses our money and whether it is actually being used for the public good. So that is also an issue that we need to engage in. But that's the reason why we have elections. We have elections so that the voters then have an opportunity to evaluate their leaders and determine whether the leaders have really delivered on that mandate. So maybe one of the other things which we also need is to try and see whether we can improve as a society our capacity to carry out public awareness, to improve the level of public awareness, to improve our level of engagement with the county governments as they churn out legislation and churn out budgets for the various counties, because that is something which we have 8 branches of the Law Society that are spread across the country, and we can be able now to start looking at those branches, build their capacity so that they are able to intervene at that level and ensure that the county legislation that is also coming out is up to scratch, and that the money that is collected at the counties does not go to waste. Yeah.
As you are campaigning obviously to become the LSK president, you must have told them about your first 100 days. What did you say?
I think it's a Kenyan thing. Everyone wants to know in your first 100 days.
I think when people were trying to tell girlfriends, in my first 100 days, I'll take you to Mombasa. I'll take you here. So what did you say?
Nick, I want to assume you are an expert when it comes to that area. But that said and done, I think there are a few things which are critical for us. What is critical for us is that we have to complete the forensic audit, which is already ongoing. The forensic audit is one that has caused a lot of questions among the membership as to whether their money is being used in the right way or not. So we are hoping that we can get that done. We can get the audits, because the Law Society has not audited its book for the last 2 years. So we are also hoping that can be done, so that then we get to a position where we know what is our state of affairs in terms of financial health, whether we are hemorrhaging or whether we are doing well. I believe that once we finish that, it would mark the process beginning of rebuilding the trust between the leaders and the membership of the society. The other thing that we need to do is to have, in my view, a governance audit that we look at the structure of the leadership of the Law Society between the council and the secretariat, and just determine whether there are adequate structures that can propel the Law Society in terms of best practice in management. So once we are able to sort those 2 or 3 issues out, then we would be at a place where we can begin to chart afresh and rebrand the Law Society, improve the capacity of the Law Society in terms of legislative drafting. We have partners with whom the relationships have been strayed a bit, and we need to get more partners on board so that we can be able to bring in additional resources to support things like strategic public interest litigation, pro bono services, which the Law Society has not been giving, to ensure that we have increased media outreach and public awareness on people to get to just know their rights and where they go to whenever they have their rights have been infringed. So we hope that if we can be able to avail all these issues, then we would be on the path to recovery and on the path of changing the mindset that people have about the Law Society of Kenya.